Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Are We There Yet? Before we get going, we want to congratulate James De Silva. You are this month's Vibratex toy winner. So give us a shout. Email awty@gmail.com. This is the episode about hookup culture. We're titling it Other. I'm your host, Susan Ruth.
I'm your host, Mara Adelman, and we are two humans having all the conversations and answering all those questions we all have about where is there when it comes to dating, relationships, and sex.
Where is there?
Where's your there, darling? What's new and exciting?
I'm so busy. My life is chaos in a good way. It's ordered chaos, but just a lot of creative things going on, films and writing and poetry and short stories and paintings and all this stuff. It's all happening. And Hey Human is growing like crazy. I've got other shows coming out of that. That's really exciting. So there's a lot going on.
That's all.
How about you? Where's your there?
I happened across, we had talked about it before, but there's the Field dating app. And I thought, I'm not having that much fun on Bumble. Let me just try. And it's definitely a little bit more of the kink community, the poly community. And I'm looking for some kind of hybrid of like hookup culture, which we're talking about today, but more of like connected culture. So I get on there and I don't know what to expect. And most of the profiles I read by straight men who in my age range are a little bit younger, it's fascinating. There's a lot more like, I'm looking for casual, connected interactions. I want connection. I want the amount of connection that men are putting in their profiles on this dating app compared to what I was seeing on things like Bumble was fascinating. So I tell a girlfriend to sign up. She's like, they seem all so emotionally intelligent. I'm like, so I've had some interesting experiences. First of all, people are more willing to move forward. So in the first couple of weeks, I've had like 6 video dates, 2 in-person dates with different people. I told myself that I wasn't going to do it quite like this, but I met a guy who lives 4 hours away in Tahoe and we went kayaking and we had so much fun. And I was like, I'm just going to hook up. I'm going to see if I still have that in me from my younger years. It's not that it was horrible. It's just that you don't have that connection, which to me is what drives those interactions to be extra fun, right?
Sure.
So nothing bad about it. So then that led me to so I have a whole protocol. I do a video first, just like I always have. I give them a WhatsApp link, we video. So I'm going to definitely push a little more for the connection that the men say they're asking for versus sometimes maybe what they're really like a little too really excited about the sex part, right? So we'll see where it all lands. I do think it's fascinating. I was like, it almost feels like because I'm on there, I'm saying I'm super sex positive and I have a higher sex drive. Therefore, let's move forward. On Bumble, it feels like guys move very slowly. Don't they also realize that eventually that might lead to sex? It's very confusing to me. They just seem to not move as quickly towards like the date or the video date as they do on this dating app Field. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, more power to you. See what happens. A friend of mine did Field and she ended up dating a guy that had a girlfriend and she was really starting to get into him and everybody was upfront about everything. And then she got pretty bummed out that he had a girlfriend and it imploded the relationship. He was also quite high profile as well. I think she really enjoyed the lifestyle around that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if she was into the person or the lifestyle, but anyway.
I definitely think I've just given up on the idea of the relationship escalator at this point in time. A couple weeks ago, a month ago, we talked about living alone together. Like, I realized that at this age, I want connection and sometimes sex and dates and fun. And if that comes from 2 different people, fine. The problem is again, I'm STI nervous because we all should be, but that's fine. But then I don't want those other people that I'm hanging out with to have 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 other people. So it's a lot of negotiating and conversating. I want it to be open and honest, which this feels a lot more open and honest than other dating sites. People are like, I'm dating other people. Oh, yeah, okay, good. Isn't that usually how it starts out? Yay, we're all talking about it. So Again, we'll see where it all lands. But that takes us into this whole hookup thing because I'm hoping that I can find a hybrid of like, not necessarily hook up, a little more like connect unprotected interactions with people. We will see if it plays out that way. But hookup culture definition is one that accepts and encourages casual sex encounters, including one-night stands and other related activity, without necessarily including emotional intimacy, bonding, or a committed relationship. It is generally associated with Western late adolescent sexuality, and in particular, United States college culture. The term hookup has an ambiguous definition because it can just be kissing or any kind of physical sexual activity. And this term has been used widely in the US since at least 2000. It can also be called non-relational sex or sex without dating. Okay, well, I like all of it except for the non-emotional intimacy part, because sex is so much more fun when there's some emotional intimacy, right? In my opinion.
In my opinion too. It is interesting that, because I think people also do the friends with benefits, I think has the emotional component.
Yeah, I'm more looking for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more like connected. And if it turns into fabulous connection and someday you're madly in love, I would just like to slow that process down. We all do this thing. We think we're in love because our hormones say so and our chemicals say so and the oxytocin says so. And then you're moving into something where you don't even know if it's a good thing.
Yeah, so, you got to wait out that representative.
Yeah. Yes, you often talk about the representative, and every time I date now, I think about that. You're going to save my ass one of these days, Susan. I'm going to be like, yeah, but that seems like his representative.
The representative. Always an interesting creature, the representative. Yeah.
But then this author, Donna Freitas, wrote a book, The End of Sex, How Hookup Culture is Leaving a Generation Unhappy, Sexually Unfulfilled, and Confused About Intimacy. She says a hookup includes some form of sexual intimacy. It can be brief. It can be intended to be purely physical. But that she was noting, she works at Northwestern, that in the 90s, college kids were about the hookup scene, but that there was still like all these cute couples on campus cuddling and canoodling and walking on campus. And that nowadays, that's quite rare to actually run into a bunch of couples. There's more groups conglomerating together, and that it's leaving a lot of these college kids feeling discomfort, out of place, adrift, insecure about love. And they're saying, I'm sorry, I missed that part. Oh, that there's so-called sex recession among younger millennials and Gen Zers. Oh, people are starting to balk against that. That's what she means. Like more and more people are kind of like, I don't want to do that. But now you've got all these young kids who are having less sex than previous generations, which might not be a horrible thing.
I think I remember seeing something about that the younger generations are not really having sex anymore.
Yeah.
I think excuse me, I think it's quite fascinating for a few different reasons. One of which is population curbing.
Yes.
You gotta wonder about the nature just taking her away with us. But I remember being horrified. I was dating someone whose daughter was I think I've talked about this on the episode before, around 13 years old. What is that, 7th grade, maybe something like that? No, wait, that might be 8th grade.
8th grade.
Yeah. And I was talking with her about the bases. She said, well, what were the bases when you were a kid? And I explained, and I said, why, what is first base for your generation? And she said, well, usually oral sex. And I just thought, holy moly.
Like before they even kiss, right? Like it's a whole thing.
Because kissing's intimate, you know. I don't know, I was really flabbergasted by that. But I do read about that being definitely not something that people do so much. Pendulums, history, pendulums back and forth. The button down 50s turned out the 60s and 70s, right? The overindulgent 80s turned into the upright moral brigade of the 90s.
You're right. It is always a pendulum fluctuating back and forth. Well, and as a medical provider, I'm thrilled because again, the syphilis numbers. So again, I'm trying to date on field, and then I'm at work the next day and I get an email from the CDC running low on injectable penicillin because of the uprising in syphilis cases. And it's kind of hard to get excited about having sex with people you don't know as well. Speaking of blowjobs, I gave a blowjob with a condom on. I was like, I do not know you. I'm sorry. Your penis does not belong in my mouth. Like, why would I could have sex with a condom. I'm going to have a blowjob with a condom. I was like, either you want it or you don't. These are your options.
How was it?
I don't mind the condom. I feel like that's a lot better than having a stranger.
How did they like it? Okay.
It wasn't horrible. I was like, better than nothing, isn't it? That was the conversation we had. I actually like to, I like to give blowjobs. It's kind of a turn on, but not, sure. But again, I'd like to know the person better and know that they're not sleeping with a lot of other people. And of course we had to talk about sexually when we last tested. It's as good as it gets.
Once again, if the whole planet could just stop having sex for 2 weeks straight, a lot of these issues would be resolved.
And then everybody gets tested and then everybody gets treated.
Yeah.
And then all the numbers go down and then we can all have fun again. I know, it's a whole thing. So then they did studies on, is it good or bad? Is hookup good or bad for people? A psychologist study showed that multiple hookups are detrimental to mental health and can cause depression and anxiety. Yet another study showed if it's done right, it can increase levels of happiness, self-esteem, and self-worth. Both the studies agreed that if you need to be really drunk to hook up, you should not be hooking up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Also, if you're really drunk, you're less likely to worry about condoms and talking about whether people have past STIs or have they gotten tested. And so another study showed, this is interesting, that the difference in men and women. One study showed that the next day reactions to hookups, positive, happy, adventuresome, desirable, pleased, excited, right? Versus the negative, empty, confused, used, awkward, disappointed. Men scored way higher on the positives. Women scored way more on the negatives about how they felt the next day. What do you have guesses on that? It's fascinating.
Do I have guesses on which?
Why women? Why is it?
I think because we live in a society and an overall worldwide culture that vilifies women and their sexual control and prowess and what it means to be sexually active and vulnerable in their bodies, and men are not given that messaging as much.
Yeah, that's a big one of them. That's huge. Yes, that. Also, based on the study, when you're hooking up with somebody, you don't know each other's bodies as well. Men, 22% of the time may not have an orgasm. Women, 58% of the time, not an orgasm. So again, sure, then you're going to feel less excited about it, or less, you're not getting all those feel-good flooded hormones. You're going to get less of those if you don't have an orgasm. And as a woman, you're less likely to have an orgasm. So that was an interesting way to look at it for sure.
And some women have sex so that they don't get raped, which is a very big sentence, but it's true. And it's not just women, obviously, but since we're talking about that, and some will do oral so they don't. You know what I mean? That is a real thing, and that's an unfortunate real thing. But of course, if you have sex as a way to placate, then you're probably not going to feel really happy about that in general. You might feel safe on some weird, ironic level, but not necessarily happy about it. It's
I feel like that goes into the fawning category, which we don't talk enough about. But there's like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And fawning is like, I'm just going to make it all better, right? That it goes into that category.
I think a lot of people do that.
I do. I agree with that. And I would almost assume that in college it happens even more because you don't
so much
not knowing how to handle the situation. So you just hook up to make it all okay. Yeah. But if anybody's listening, you do not have to do that. It's okay. You know what? I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That's why everyone should go see the movie Barbie or watch it on Netflix now that it's out on Netflix.
Yes.
And or Amazon or wherever it is. Maybe it's on HBO. I don't remember which streamer, but it's very empowering.
Very empowering. So that is a good one to go watch. And it's okay to say no, and it's okay not to be fawning over some guy because he wants sex and you don't want sex. Don't do it. But we'll go into some pros and cons because there are pros to it. So if you're hooking up,
it's good for your skin.
Say again?
Good for your skin.
It's good. Yes. Oh, yes. Well, we've already talked about like any orgasms, masturbation, sexual activity is good for all those feel-good hormones, right? Dopamine, oxytocin. But I have met some people. So I met a lady who's on field and I've met a couple other people who I've talked to, and it kind of feels like they're all chasing that dragon. Whether ego driven, oh good, somebody paid attention to me, oh good, I get to have more sex with new people, which is not why I'm on there. I'm just hoping to find the other unicorns who kind of just want to have a less committed thing, which is what this talks about. So part of the pros to that is casual dating can remove the pressure of monogamy and the demands of an exclusive relationship, such as being expected to meet all of your partner's needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little separate from hookup. That goes more into like the friends with benefits category, but it's all kind of connected.
Well, and don't confuse also polyamory with non-monogamous. What is the word?
Non-monogamous hookups. Oh,
no, there's a
casual dating.
Yeah, the ethical non-monogamy. There it is. I knew it would pop out of my brain somewhere.
Yes,
ethical non-monogamy can be different than polyamory. It could be a totally different situation. I suppose they sort of overlap in a Venn diagram of sorts, but
they do. So polyamory is I'm going to have multiple love relationships and connected relationships with people. Ethical non-monogamy is I'm going to be with one person who's my nesting partner, my main person, and I'm going to be more likely to find other relationships outside of that, but it's ethical and we all talk about it, which is again what drove me to Field, because I'm like, I just want to talk about it. Yeah. The deceitfulness that goes on from people. Oh, I haven't slept with anybody. I don't go on other dates. Oh, so weird.
Yeah, and I don't even think you have to be nesting with another person in ethical non-monogamy. I think you just aren't.
That's true, because technically, I guess I could be called solo poly. If I'm going to be dating multiple people, trying to find connections with multiple people, that's what they call us single people. But to me, I'm just going to call it multi-dating. I'm going to date a bunch of people till I find somebody that maybe I want to live alone together with. Like, there's so many different terms for it all. Someday we'll do a whole thing on like open relationships because it's fascinating. But the other pros to just hooking up or friends with benefits or casual dating, it's going to give you the freedom to discover what you want more, what works for you in a relationship and what doesn't with different people. It can help you figure out your sexual wants and needs versus those people that, you get married in your 20s and you're together and you're trying to figure out your sexualities together. It might be a little bit harder to know what works for you and what doesn't if you're not having this period of time. I'm not advocating for casual hookups, everybody, but like, if that's why you're doing it, then yes, getting to know yourself sexually and what works for you and what doesn't is one of the good reasons, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's also fascinating.
Also fascinating. It allows more variety.
Yeah, I was just about to say, variety. It also is a way to find out what it is you really like and don't like.
Yeah, right. By doing it that way, instead of trying to do it again with a partner because what happens, I feel like, is people get together and then they stop talking about sex about 2 years in. And most people I've talked to multiple people who've opened up their relationships after 20 years. And this one couple I met were together since they were 21. And then they had a kid and they didn't have a great sex life. And now they're both dating other people recently, and they're both thrilled and they're having more sex than they ever had. And they realized their sex life was horrible. And it just kind of is opening up this whole world to them. And they were looking at the divorce track. So, I mean, again, polyamory and open relationships, ethical non-monogamy, not for everybody.
No. And again, communication is key.
Yeah. In my perfect world, I'd be married. And at that point, and I'd have my person and then I'd have another person. But since I'm not married, it's harder to, yeah. So
you'd have 3 people or 2?
My partner, my main partner, and 1 or 2 more, but no more. And they better not have, it gets too big. Imagine that bubble. And they've got 2.
I get it.
Oh my God, that bubble gets so big. And then my OCD and gets grossed out. Blah. No thanks. It can also put a buffer against emotional turmoil that can happen in more serious relationships, especially for those youngsters who get in too quickly and feel too emotional too quickly, get attached too quickly, right? Takes the pressure off trying to find the one. And I agree with that. I was feeling a little thirsty, I guess. I went 2 years during the pandemic with no sexual activity because I was dealing with my elderly parents and work and medical providers.
Yeah, sure. So we had a pandemic.
Yeah, we had a pandemic. So when you're slightly too thirsty and then you're trying to find the one, that doesn't bode well. They also postulate if you have too many things going on that you will then not find the one because you're too busy doing these other things, right? Yeah, I know. Where's the happy medium? But again, is there a one? I think that I would argue against that concept the more that I go through all of this.
No, I think there's not just one.
Right?
Except for Ryan Gosling.
She's like, that's my one. And then of course there's less time constraints in a traditional relationship, like we've talked about. You have a little more time for yourself, maybe less FOMO, you can do what you want. It's a good chance to sexperiment is a word they used. I like that word. Sexperiment.
Oh, interesting.
You probably did some more of that in your younger years, right? A little more sexperimenting.
Not necessarily. I've had a couple of relationships where there was a few people involved and everybody knew about everybody, so it was safe and communicated. I just am
ethical non-monogamy before it was cool.
Yeah, right. I'm just good at my own company, and so I don't necessarily need to be in a relationship. I've never been one that has hopped from relationship to relationship. I have downtime to reflect, that kind of thing. And the older I get, of course, the more I'm able to articulate what it is I'm seeking or need, or to have my boundaries. I'm not perfect at it for sure, but you grow and you learn who you are and what you like, what makes you titillated,
and sometimes that is the experiences that you go through, sexual or not sexual.
And it's a whole different experience to be, let's say it's a friend that develops over time. Let's say years go by, that if you eventually consummate that relationship, the intimacy level is probably going to be pretty deep and lovely.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a friend that you just like to play video games with or go to the movies with, and every once in a while after the popcorn, you go home and sweat a little bit, that's fun too. And there's nothing wrong with that. My big thing with sex: laugh, enjoy, listen, explore, safety. Yeah.
Safety. But have fun. I know.
Yeah, you have to laugh.
You have to laugh.
It's really like it's a ridiculous activity. It's ridiculous. Have you ever videoed one time in college? My college boyfriend and I, one of my college boyfriends and I, because I had a couple, I guess, but we taped it and watched it. I think I've talked about this on the show before, and then watched it back. And of course, I'm watching it horrified at how insane it all looks, and he loved it. He's, let's do that again. I'm just thinking, wow, human beings having sex it's hilarious. It's really ridiculous.
It really is a ridiculous activity, but
it's so ridiculous. Fun. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. But it's just, if you can't laugh at the bonobo of it all, it's just
bonobos all just wanting to have tons of sex. Well, and then so the other piece is, so it's drama free, and you can have selfish orgasms. This was fascinating. So
I would argue it's not drama free, but they can say that. That's fine.
They're saying it more like that whole thing about, like, if you are not going into it like this is going to be a relationship, the drama free part is like being worried about whether that person's going to call you, being worried about who has the upper hand. It's just more like, okay, that was fun. I'll see you when I see you. But you're right. It doesn't always go that way. 99% of the time, it probably doesn't go.
I feel like it'd be great practice, though. I think it's definitely great practice for boundaries and knowing what you want and who you are.
Yes. And talking about boundaries. And then that's why they talk about the selfish orgasms, because you're not worried about pleasing them maybe as much. So you can be a little bit more like, here's what I need, because you're not trying to take the relationship escalator to, I want this person to love me, so I'm going to do it this way, right? Like, it's just more like, what do I need? What do I get out of this? So a little more selfishness, which isn't a horrible thing, right? But then there's cons, obviously, which I am finding to already be true, because I'm like already tired of like, I've squeezed in too many dates this week. It's funny. I never thought I'd say that. Like most of them being video, but I'm like, oh, I'm tired. Like, I'm going to go spend some time with my dogs by myself at the ocean kind of thing, right? But the cons of just doing kind of more of a casual dating, hookup, friends with benefits, is you have to carve out more time in your schedule to go on dates with multiple people and get to know them, which is very time consuming. You don't always have the ability to explore deeper connections. And you can't always like casually bring this person to like events. Hey, I'm going to bring you to my family wedding, but you're not my boyfriend.
I mean, you just have to ask. I think that would be hilarious. I think if someone I barely know asked me to be their date for a wedding, and I'm not a big fan of going to weddings, I would probably find that hilarious. I would too. I'd be a bit into that just for the people watching alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it would be fun.
If you're out there and you need a date for your wedding, give me a call.
It looks damn hot.
Send me an email because that's hilarious.
Hot in a dress. Everybody should take Susan to the next wedding.
Or a suit. I could wear a pantsuit.
Pantsuit looks really good on you.
I have a pretty blue velvet pantsuit.
I've seen you in both of these things, and yes, you do. Walk of shame, of course, that happens. When you're trying to get home and you're like a little early morning, you might regret it. There was a study in 2008 from the Durham University in the UK found that only about half of women experience positive feelings after a one-night stand compared to 80% of men.
That just makes me giggle.
And so again,
did Durham also make a condom? Oh no, it's Durex.
Oh, it's Durex. You're right. I was like, they do. That would be even more funny. And then, of course, we're back to the safety thing. So, you got to talk protection and when were you last tested, and don't drink too much and make sure you know them. So I have a whole thing going on personally, which we did a whole thing on safety and dating. But now that I'm going to be trying to date more, I do a video. I am not going to have them come over to my house or be at my house until I've seen where they live, especially with this ethical non-monogamy thing, because I've heard stories from other women where they say, oh, I'm married, but my partner has a partner and everybody knows, and then come to find out their partner does not know. And so I feel like if I can see their house before they see, okay, fine. And then also I want a last name so I can Google the could be Jesus out of them and just get to send. These are all things that allow you to go, okay, what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing are jiving up, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It feels a little detective-y, but there's so many people out there that are with bad behavior. I just don't want to fall into those traps.
There's 8 billion people on the planet now. Statistically, there's going to be a lot more bad apples on that tree than there ever has been. So
that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. So those are my ways of staying safe. And then of course, talks about were you last tested, and do you always use condoms, and have you ever had a STI? That's where I go with it all. But I mean, that's a lot. Look at how much work that is. Oh my God. So yeah, make sure you're not drinking too much. Remember that you could still get attached. So, too much sex with the same person, oxytocin being released.
That's like condoms are good.
Condoms do help with that. But yeah, remember we talked about that, I think, on one of our
long time ago. Yeah.
About not getting too attached. You continue to use the condoms both for safety and sex, but also safety to not get too attached too easy. It can make you miss your ex more and feel empty. That's an interesting one. I didn't think about that one. So you're having kind of connected sex with somebody, but it's not as connected as you used to have. And you kind of think you're over your person, but all of a sudden you're like, oh, I missed that. Right. So don't do that and then go running back to your ex that you shouldn't have been with in the first place.
No, I was going to say, or the antithesis of that is, of course, using it to not feel a thing about your ex. Other direction.
What's the saying? You should get under somebody to get over somebody.
Right.
It kind of holds true, but
does it?
It's helpful. There's something to be said about it, I have to say.
I think time is really the thing.
Time is really the thing. Being reminded that you're still a person after that. But again, that only works for some people. And you're right. If you're consistently getting under somebody to not think about your ex, then you really should focus in on yourself, being alone, and figuring out what all that's about.
Yeah,
right. Less authenticity, vulnerability, less communication sometimes in these kind of casual datings, more outcome driven and enjoyment versus wait, I don't get that. More outcome driven versus enjoying the moment. So first,
like what it might lead to, what it might lead to. That's maybe back to the thing of, you don't necessarily, for those who want a relationship, that if you're doing the multiple partners, the hookup, you're not so obsessed with any one person.
That's a little bit where I'd like to land. I mean, I'm not going to have sex with people.
That's a usurious in some ways. It feels a little usurious because you're using other people to fulfill some part of you to
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good, at least not to me. I mean, here's different strokes for different folks. Some people are really great at hooking up, other people are not so great at it.
I thought I was until I know. So I need to feel some kind of crazy chemistry or connection moving forward. I kind of did it a little. I mean, it was cute and we had fun kayaking, but for me, it was a bit of an experiment to like, where would I land on all that? Besides, it had been a long while. So I was like, I was going to try this. But no, it doesn't work for me anymore. And it only worked.
I only date serial killers because they get so obsessed with you. It's so romantic.
Then they just want to call you and stalk you and love you.
It's so good.
Last but not least, it's less work than a relationship, right? Boyfriends, girlfriends.
Is it though? Because like you said, there's a lot that has to be done, and there's so much preparation and figuring out, is someone safe or who are they dating? It goes on and on and on.
Maybe it's like a wash. Maybe it's almost even. Maybe it's good practice for time constraints around having a partner. Because
it's like they say, before you have a kid, get a plant, then a dog, and then a kid.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about a relationship, time constraint wise, start at Hookup, go to Friends with Benefits, casual dating, and then you'll realize how much time it takes to be in a relationship. Who knows? That's funny.
That is funny.
And you took the quiz? Did you take the quiz?
I did. I was surprised at it, actually. It said that I should be hooking up. And I don't know that I agree with that. Again, this is my issue with quizzes in general across the board, even the ones we post for people to take, is that they're so generalized. There's no nuance to them whatsoever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree. Mine said the same thing.
Yeah.
You should just hook up. Just hook up. Which is, life is short and the night is young. Why don't you go take advantage of everything there is to offer? A good occasional hookup will make you feel better. So I think I've said it like 10 times already. Sure, but more of a friends with benefits, committed, longer term connection that's more casual, I feel like works for me.
And as I am on this show, always the devil's advocate, that exact same sentence could be said for being in a monogamous, committed relationship. Life is short.
Yeah.
Experience the greatness of that.
Yeah. So to each their own, I guess, is what we keep going back to. Whatever floats your boat, right? But I did put a bunch of we put a bunch of links down below. Is hooking up good for you? Some videos, one night stands, the pros and the cons. People are doing it, so you might as well educate yourself about why it's good for you and why it's not good for you. Yeah.
And Mara, you're excellent at finding all these different references and things. Hats off to you for every episode that we have had. You have done so much research so that we can provide these really great links for y'all to look at and hopefully go into your own deep dives. And everything we say is really just conversation around ideas. There is no hard, fast rule for anyone about anything. And that's the beauty and complexity mosaic that is the human psyche and how we live, how we love, how we experience each other and ourselves. So be patient with yourself, and it's okay. Whatever it is, it's okay. And you're gonna figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, that's okay too. Yeah. It's all right. It's all okay. Don't hurt someone if you can avoid it. Gentle with yourself.
Be kind to people. And that leads us great into, we're being kind with ourselves and realizing that Susan and I are both really busy and that we have some passion projects that we're really focused on. I'm hoping in the future to do some couples retreats and work more, do a lot more coaching. So we're going to take a hiatus from this. Susan's got some fun other things going on as well.
So much stuff going on. Yeah.
Nothing particular we want to show.
Hey, well, keep an eye out. I mean, no matter what, check out Hey Human Podcast. Go to SusanRuth.com. I'm always posting. Well, not always. I post whenever something interesting happens. I'll stick it up on there. Mara, do you have a website too? Yes, lovecoachmara.com.
Lovecoachmara.com, and my Instagram is lovecoachmaraig. And we may be back to do more of this in the future, but for now we're both going to focus on kind of our individual pieces. And we'll go from there. But keep an eye, because we're both going to keep moving things forward. And Susan, even though the relationship thing isn't your only project, I feel like even on your Hey Human podcast, it always kind of goes back to relationships. and human dynamics in general. So it all kind of goes together.
All of it. We're doing the best we can with what we've got. My big takeaway always is consent and kindness and vulnerability.
Yes.
And communication. And with those things, you will, in every aspect of your life, every single aspect, you will go far. I feel like.
Far.
Yeah. And that includes with yourself, all those things with yourself, consent with yourself. And I know that's a weird thing to wrap your head around, but if you really start to think about it, we deny ourselves consent on a lot of levels with a lot of things. We do things that we don't really want to do. Yeah. That's also consent. So yeah, just something to chew on, think about. Do you have any
that's it.
Philosophical falafels?
No falafels from me, except for that I love you to pieces. This has been a blast. We may continue this.
Yeah. So who knows?
We will see each other again and in person in a couple of weeks. That's all great. And I love you to pieces, and everybody stay well and connected out there.
Yes, you're kicking ass out there, everybody. Keep going, and we believe in you. So love you, Mara.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.